just open with a karakia and then hand to Chloe, who's going to introduce the session. To begin, I'll start with this karakia timatanga. Manawa mai te mauri nuku, manawa mai te mauri rangi, ko te mauri kei au e mauri tipua, ko pakaru mai te pō, homie, huie, taiukie. And that's just a brief karakia to say, embrace the life force of the earth, embrace the life force of the sky. The life force I have gathered is powerful and shatters all darkness. Join it, gather it, it is done. Chloe, I'll hand over to you to do the initial introductions.
Kia ora tātou, ko Chloe Howard tōkona. Thank you, Adrian, for the karakia this morning. So my name is Chloe Howard and I'm an associate with the Centre for Social Impact, and I'm delighted to welcome you all here this morning to the Kia Whiti Tonu series. This is a free program of 5 90-minute workshops offered to the community sector by the Centre for Social Impact through support from Foundation North. So this program has been developed following the recently released National COVID-19 Impact Survey of tangata whenua, community and voluntary organisations. The survey was carried out over May and June 2020 by CSI in partnership with Huie, Community Aotearoa, Philanthropy New Zealand and Volunteering New Zealand. The findings of the survey were published in the Time to Shine report, and we will ensure that there's a link available to that. The survey identified a strong commitment across the sector to respond, recover, and then reshape for the future. But it also identified some key areas where respondents wanted support to help them shine brightly and build better after the disruption of COVID-19. So the Kia Whiti Tonu series has been developed to respond to that need. The 5 workshops being offered cover grant writing, which we've got this morning, marketing and communications, which we have on Friday, and we've had innovation strategy and wellbeing sessions. We are aiming to make all these sessions as accessible as possible, as they were heavily oversubscribed, so we'll be recording them and making them all available from the Centre for Social Impact website. At the end of the session today, we will be asking for your feedback via a survey link in the chat. This is really important to help us design future program content. We're keen to make sure that we can deliver more of these and offer out to the community, but we need you to tell us what areas that you would like and what areas interest you there. So I'm just going to hand over back to Adrian and Anne, who are running the session this morning on grant writing. I also want to acknowledge we've got Aggie, who's looking after things all technical for us this morning, so we're in safe hands. And yeah, so over to you, Adrian and Anne. Welcome.
Thank you, Chloe. I'll get straight underway with the slideshow, so just bear with me one moment while I get that going. There we are. And as you can see, we've titled today Kick-Ass, Proposal Content, which is a way of saying how to bring content for proposals that you may be writing for government or philanthropic sectors. Yeah, we'll get underway right now. Just got to make sure I can share controls with one of my colleagues. There we are. But just by way of introduction, so as I said before, my name's Adrian Field. I'm from Hamilton originally, have lived here in Auckland for most of the last 30 years. And my background's in evaluation and program design. I tend to spend a lot of my time helping organisations communicate the impact that they're having, and that has often flowed naturally into organisations using those findings to help provide the evidence base for the grants that they write. Anne, I'll hand to you now and let you introduce yourself.
Okay, wonderful. I'm Anne Bateman. I'm originally from New York. You might be able to tell by the accent. Originally from New York, but came to New Zealand about 11 years ago, where I worked in central government. But then I say that I devolved down through the DHBs and then into the NGO sector. So I have a bit of a background in executive management in NGOs. As a clinical social worker by training, I'm really invested in doing more good in the world. So capability and capacity building with nonprofits, and doing good, creating impact, and maybe we get to have a little bit of fun along the way, because the stuff we do is usually pretty serious. So that's a bit about me. Oh, and the picture is my pre-COVID haircut, I'll say, because we've all had to make a couple changes, right, with this new environment we're in.
We sure have. And webinars, I think, one of the ways in which suddenly we're all embracing technology in a way that we didn't before. I'll just say a little bit about the collective that is Progressum of Anne and myself. We both have our own standalone companies, Bateman Consulting and Dovetail, and we've come together with a particular focus that started really over coffee and a cheese scone one day, but with a particular focus around helping build the not-for-profit sector in different ways. And that has aligned really well with the Centre for Social Impact, who have invited us to run the webinar today. And I'm really grateful for that opportunity to be able to reach a broader group. Do you want to add anything to that, Anne?
I think it's just about our commitment, and this is really a passion project for us, and we're really glad to be able to join up with CSI.
Exactly, thank you. Okay, and hopefully you've got control of the buttons now and you can move on to the next slide.
Okay, great. So we're going to talk a little bit about how today's run so that we all have that up front. So we do have a couple of learning objectives today, right? It's a pretty fast and furious run through on some basics in grant writing and proposal development. So we want you to get a sense of some of the common pitfalls. Maybe get a jump on some of those proposals or grants and get an idea of what you can start putting into your what we call the library, things that you have ready to go. A couple of tools and resources for collaborative writing, especially in our virtual environment. Ways that you can be very clear with your submissions. You know, making it really good for the readers, for the people who need to rate it, and also for the organization itself, so everybody's on the same page. And a couple of tips for delivering a well-presented final submission. So today our process is that we're doing this webinar style. So we don't have everybody's cameras and microphones enabled. We have quite a few people coming through. We had 130 sign up and we currently have almost 60 on board. So it would become a little bit onerous as much as we would like to see you. So we have the Q&A. So if you find Q&A at the bottom, it'll open up a little window for you. Most of us are familiar with this at this point in our Zoom live, but if you can try to put some of those questions in the Q&A, we'll try to answer them as we go, and we'll have occasional pauses. And at the end of the session, there will be an evaluation. In the middle, if you just have general chat, let us know if there's any issues with your technology. We have a couple of people standing by to be able to answer questions about that.
We're also going to be, and we'll be launching our first poll shortly, we're going to do a couple of interactive polls through the course of the webinar. And later on, we'll also be putting up what are called Jamboards, which we'll put the link in the chat and you'll be able to click on that and actually participate using your keyboard as well on some of the very, very quick and easy exercises. And we'll see how that unfolds.
Yeah.
I think now in fact, yes, we have a poll, and I think Aggie, you'll be popping the first poll up. Hopefully it will pop up on screen shortly. There we go. Okay, so the poll should be in progress now, and you get to click on one of the following. How do you feel when you begin grant writing? And you've got 4 options. What am I supposed to be doing? Oh no, here we go again. How on earth do we fit their box? Or great, an opportunity. So I'll give you a minute to pop them in, pop in your responses. I can see responses are flooding in thick and fast, so thank you. It's great to know the technology is working. Thank you, Aggie. Just about there. Just give it another few seconds and see if anyone else wants to vote. Okay, Aggie, we might end the polling there and see if we can put the results up. Thank you. Okay, hopefully you can all see this, but so this is a nice way to help people feel like they're not alone. So we have 25 people who are saying, how on earth do we fit their box? So whenever you think that, very clearly you're not alone. There are lots of people who are in that same boat. A good number think great opportunity, and that is a completely valid response as well. And then for others, what am I supposed to be doing here? It's just a whole new ball game that I'm struggling with. And for others, it's a deep breath. Oh no, here we go again. So thank you everyone for participating. I hope this gives you a bit of a sense of you're not alone in this space now, and that lots of people go through these same range of emotions when faced with a grant or a proposal that needs to be written. Thanks, Aggie. We might close that off now and move on. Actually, I think I can do that. Stop share results. There we go. Okay, cool. And I'll just, Anne, do you have control of the screen again? Yep, I can see you have. Cool.
So we wanted to talk a little bit about why we're here today. Gosh, we've all had to make a lot of changes. We've all had to adapt. I'm not going to elaborate on this because, gosh, we're all living it, right? It's not just my haircut that suffers in this. But sitting, also sitting from the perspective of, I'm on the governance of 3 different NGOs. I'm working with a lot of different nonprofits. It's a really tough time. And also getting those resources for the adaptations that we're all having to make is a challenge. And we know that things are coming out, that opportunities, right? Yay, it's an opportunity, but it also puts it puts strain on the organization. So we want to try to make it a little bit easier for you, a little bit more straightforward, and to give not just you, but your organization. You may have some people up and coming who are really interested to be able to grow that capacity to get more resources so that we can weather this time together. Now, what we're talking about today is really just best practice. There's a range of different ways that you can apply this. The RFPs are the big things, right? They tend to be really substantial, really meaty. I don't think I've written one that's under 100 pages with its attachments. But it's also, the philanthropic grants, unsolicited proposals might be something you're considering, especially in this time where we're all pretty strained, but you might know of different places that are really wanting to contribute. Closed tenders, sole suppliers, RFQs, whichever it is really, hopefully what we can give you today can apply to so many of these things. And just to keep in the back of your head, because sometimes it helps to have a little bit of a scenario when you're trying to apply some of these tools. So this is just a little bit of an opportunity to do that. We thought, a $25,000 non-sustainable investment is available from a foundation. And the philanthropic objectives are aligned with your organization. Now, you've decided to apply and you have been asked to manage and develop the application. So it's really competitive because things are really competitive now. They are so much more competitive than, even a few years ago. So as we go, kind of think about what that project is that you might apply some of these tools to. Great. So there's a lot of pitfalls in this. Right. So what are some of those pitfalls? I'm sure you have your own. If anybody wants to pop it in the chat, the different pitfalls that you've run into, then that would be great. It'll give us even more information about what you're encountering out there. This is how I feel sometimes. But I know it's how a lot of my clients feel and the people I've worked with feel. So some of the things, we did an informal poll across a bunch of people we knew. We thought about the different situations we've been in. Now, some of the pitfalls that people have encountered are not considering cultural needs up front, right? That's a real significant issue. An idea that's not fully developed, and you walk into it and all of a sudden it keeps changing and changing and changing, and it takes a lot more time, or it gets quite confused. Descriptions of things that you're doing that are not clear and succinct. So it's really hard sometimes when you're living and breathing it to really be able to hone in for a reader that is not familiar with your organization. Lots of jargon. Now, remembering that there might be a variety of different people on the other end who are trying to understand what impact you're trying to make and what you're trying to deliver, and they might get a little bit lost in jargon. And with that, you could lose the reader, and you never want to lose the person that you're trying to connect with. If it's not tied to your strategic direction, the funder's strategic direction, that can be a significant issue and a pitfall. You're not using good development principles as far as your programmatic objectives and your programmatic components. Too much time on developing the proposal and you miss the deadline. That's kind of the most basic and simple and hardest part. Conflicting ideas and approaches coming from different people, and if there's no evidence of effectiveness of what you're going to do, even if it's, doesn't necessarily need to be research evidence, but something that at least points you in the direction that this will really create the impact that you're designing for. Is there anything else anybody wants to pop in the chat? Oh, somebody says you have to be a good writer too. Half-hearted applications and not enough time spent on proposals. Those are really good points. Somebody's asking me to slow down a little bit. Just so you know, the video of this will also be available after the fact. So looking at the different ways to align to funder strategies, this is really important because if it's not aligned and it's not fitting with kind of what the impact they're trying to create in the community, then the likelihood of winning winning that funding round is fairly low. And so making sure that what you're doing, what your organization does, is aligned with that is quite important. And you can usually find this on their websites. It'll be sometimes with the grant rounds, it'll talk about what they're looking for. So this is, one little thing that you can use, but then you can drive it through the rest of your content. Now, what we're talking about today is not the entirety of the proposal process or the development process. Usually, the clock starts and that funding is announced, and then you're researching and reviewing. Today, we're talking about the development, the writing, and the review process. So kind of that nuts and bolts part. But, you do want to get to submission, and that's when we all kind of breathe and we go, oh, thank goodness we got it in on time, right? But that post-submission part, because make sure that you're finding out what that looks like for the funding agency, because it does vary. Everything from phone calls to site visits to interviews. You always need to know what that post-submission part is, because you don't want to miss that coming through either. Different resources, looking at making sure that all of the work that we do is culturally responsive is really important. You'll find a lot of different resources. I found this one pretty straightforward, really, really tangible. So Think about the groups you're serving, you know, what the inequities are within the area that you're working in. And if anybody else has any other, resources, also please feel free to put that in the chat too, and then we can always, you know, then the others will know about it. Foundational, and because we're talking about some of that foundational thinking that goes with the development of content for your proposal. So this is actually from procurement.gov.nz, and this is the elements of good public value. And while you might not be writing a government funding request, these are pretty basic and logical areas to think about when you're looking at what the content is, what the program you're developing is. So looking at quality, looking at outcomes, and looking at price, right? And those three all need to line up. And you'll see underneath there that there's a lot of different components to each of those. So it kind of helps you to break down what some of the different ways you can communicate these value statements are.
Okay, thanks, Anne. I've just got a slide here about logic models. In one of our other webinar and workshops formats that we use, we go into a bit more depth about how you can develop a logic model for your own programs. But I'm just going to touch on it really briefly here because there's a part of it that I think is really helpful to think about even in this grant writing one. So a logic model is a way of describing how the things you do leads to the outcomes that you're expecting to deliver. And the way they often start, as you can see in the top left of the corner here, a problem definition. And that's the issue that you're dealing with, that your program or organization even is set up to address. Then you have the inputs, and the inputs are the things that maybe the funding that you're receiving, the design of a program, and the people who deliver it. So those are the inputs, and they're the core foundation to make it all happen. Then we have the activities, which are the things that you do. It may be an environmental conservation program. It may be helping young people into employment and training. It may be a marae building program. It could be all sorts of things. And then the outputs are the things that you're sort of tied down to deliver. That you're expected to take this number of people through a program over this period of time. So those are the deliverables. And this is the bit I want to get to because we're going to have an exercise very shortly, and that's about outcomes. So the outcomes are the things that come out of all the activities you do. They're the changes that you make. They're the things like we have people who have moved into employment and have a more secure life. We have young people who have been through a resilience program and are better able to deal with the bumps in the road that life throws at them from time to time. And all of these outcomes ultimately lead to a goal. Now, what we're going to do now is we're going to have a little activity. So you'll find in the chat box a web link that's been posted to something called a Jamboard, and hopefully that will pop up on your screens. I'm just trying to see if I can access the chat here. I can't see it, but hopefully others can. Oh, here it is. No, I've got it here. So Amy has just popped on the chat a thing saying, please click the following link to take you to a Jamboard. Now, a Jamboard is a clever wee thing that Google have come up with, and it's like a whiteboard for lots of people to be able to use at the same time. Now, for those of you that might be doing this on a tablet or might be doing it from your phones, this may be a bit more of a struggle, but we'll only be doing this for a minute or so. So I'll commentate as people have a go. So if you're able to open up the, click on the link and open up the Jamboard, and I can see a good number of people are here already. We've just popped up a question at the top of that page saying, what are your short-term outcomes? If you look on the left-hand side, you can see about halfway down, there's a bar and there's a sticky note. And if you click on the sticky note, something will pop up on the screen and you can type in an idea about what an outcome might be of the activities that you do. I think one of my colleagues might be having a go shortly at popping one in. And you should see them pop up very shortly, and then you can move them around the screen. So we'll just take a minute. I can see lots of people are joining, which is great. As I say, if you have a look at the left-hand side of the screen, there's a bar. Here we go. Someone's just written an outcome saying, deliver our seminar opportunity, deliver work opportunities. Now, what's quite cool is I'm going to move some of them around. So I've just moved training new volunteers to there. Someone's saying our clients feel supported. That's a great outcome. Our clients feel supported. Here's another one. Rangatahi are engaging in meaningful learning. Finishing our year's program, delivering our youth-based initiatives. Whew, I'm just saying, I feel like this experiment is a bit of a success. I was getting I was a little bit worried in a webinar of 50 people how this would go, and I am so grateful that everyone's diving in and having a go.
That's great.
Yeah, rangatahi feel connected to their identity and their peers. Develop new ways of fundraising to not rely too much on grants. That's quite a cool outcome for your organisation, actually. That's moving towards independence. Oh, people are moving them around now. Supporting volunteering in all its capacities in the community, reaching areas outside Auckland, young people engaged in protecting the environment, increasing volunteering opportunities. Wow, thank you everyone. You've got some excellent ideas here. Safer water for the community to use without harmful contaminants. So these are all really, really good outcomes, and they're the things that you want your programs to lead to as time goes on. So thank you. Now, 2 participants have raised their hands, so I might just go to the Q&A and just pick up some of the things that have popped up here. Oh, 2 people have said that there's too many people, so this is a learning. Not everyone can access the Jamboard. So thank you for pointing that out. We'll jump back now, back into the presentation. So if you leave the Jamboard, we'll only do this a couple more times, and it'll be just as briefly as this, but thank you for that. Hopefully our commentary is giving you a sense of the sorts of things people are putting up. Thanks everyone. We'll go back to the slideshow now, and we'll press on. Okay. Okay, I'm handing back to Anne now, who's going to talk about how to start building content.
Right.
Anne, have you got control of the screen again? Oh, hang on, I need to just check. Yep, great.
So, and we're getting some Q&As through too about specific approaches to different types of projects. You know, what the difference is there. And I'd say, you know, there's kind of the framework that we're working within, right? And this is what you're seeing on the screen right now, which is the content basics and kind of the library. So this is the framework. And as you go down, right, into content and specifics, that's really where the variability tends to happen, and the requirements of whatever the funding agency is, right? We know that, you know, some are a little more restrictive as far as, you know, how many words you can put in there, or if it's an online application process. But generally, these are the things that most funders are going to be looking at and looking for. So it's a good idea to start thinking about this in your organization. So voice and tone, right? This is about how your organization wants to be perceived. And this is the writing part. Like somebody had said, you need to be a good writer, but there are ways you can develop some of these writing skills, especially organizationally. Now, you know, each organization will have a different personality, and the more that your writing reflects that personality, you know, the more you're communicating. So, for example, you know, like I've worked with several Kaupapa Maori organizations. So some of that voice and tone is actually the use of language, the use of, you know, the different values that they have developed within their organization, and that drives through. It can also, if you can put pictures, then it can be very useful as far as communicating what your organization is about, and how it approaches the services it delivers. So thinking through this a little bit, you know, will help you also develop consistency with your written proposals. So I've developed different tones, you know, over the years. I generally, when I'm working with different organizations, have a different voice and tone, because that is what I'm trying to communicate. My kind of standard tends to be a little bit more on the conversational side, and in engaging the reader in what you're writing. Remember, on the other end of this, and so I was a funder for about 10 years, and I've probably reviewed several hundred different applications. And we have people who are dedicated to what they do. They're really invested in getting good outcomes for the community, but they may be reading about 50 of these. So the easier it is to read and the more engaging it is to read, you know, the better that is. So we're going to try the troublesome Jamboard once again.
What we'll do, Anne, is I'm going to stop sharing the screen, and I will put us up, and then I'll share, so that for those who can't access the Jamboard, I will share what's on the screen, so that everyone can see what's getting popped up. So here we go.
So you'll see at the top a Jamboard. Now, we do have an ulterior motive there for those of you who can get into it, and it is, you know, this is a great online tool for collaboration. So Adrian, if you click the little button and go to screen 2 on the Jamboard.
Yeah, everyone will need to do that. You'll see at the top, there's a little screen saying, with a little square on it, saying 1 of 3. If you click on the next arrow, you'll see a question saying, what is the impression that you want to make on the review panel in 1 word? So hopefully people can see the little rectangle at the top that says 1 of 3, 2 of 3, and you'll be able to move on. And I've just moved the screen on, so hopefully you can see that. Oh, and we're getting things up already. Someone said worthy, experienced, must do.
Great.
Meaningful. Worthy is very popular. Engage with organization.
Right.
As Anne said, this is a really helpful collaborative tool if you've got people in different parts of the country and you want to do some brainstorming. These are great for doing that. And there are other options as well. We don't have shares in Google. Miro is another option.
I wish I did.
Yeah, exactly. Zoom have their own whiteboard as well. So yeah, there are other options, but we find Jamboard's quite cool.
They're getting some bang for the buck and value in there. Engage with the organization. Impact. These are fantastic.
This is really good. Yeah. We're a valuable resource. Quality, essential impact. Yeah, align with values. Oh, suddenly we've lost everything on the screen. Meeting the needs of the communities. There is a clear screen button that someone may have accidentally pressed. We're getting new things up. That's okay.
They're just getting us ready for the next round of post-its.
All good. Shall we? I'll stop sharing this now and pop back to the presentation. Thank you, everyone. That was great participation.
And for those of you who can't access the Jamboard, you know, even observing, I think you get an idea, and I'm sure I wonder if you had your own that was different, or if it was generally the same as the others.
Yeah, or it might have been me that jumped to page 3. Ellen has commented to all panelists, so that might have been what had happened. Melissa said it's a great tool. Thank you. That's excellent. Now, Anne, I'll just hand control back to you, so that, there we go. You should be able to move the slides on now.
And we're not going to go through this exercise, but what I do want to tell you is that you're going to receive a workbook after this with some information and guidance as far as some of the activities we've done or some of the things we've mentioned. And, you know, whether it's you or if you want to bring a lot, you know, use them with other people in your organization, that's what they're there for. You know, it's a little bit about writing your organizational overview, which you're going to have for every single application. So, Adrienne, do you want to talk a little bit about tools and resources?
I do, thank you. So I'm just going to talk about some of the approaches that you can take when you're wanting to start getting people together for brainstorming, making ideas happen. So there we go. Now I'm hoping, there we go. So one of the best ways I have found of getting ideas on a page when you're at that early stage of grant writing is what I call, what are known as affinity diagrams. And we might know them as post-it notes, but post-it notes are more than just sticking something up on a wall, or an affinity diagram is more than sticking a post-it note up on a wall. It's actually a process for, in a structured way, getting people to put their ideas down. All too often you find, I think I have found when I'm writing a grant application that I get some fantastic ideas down and I send it off to other people to look at. And they go, have you thought of this? Have you thought of that? And before you know it, you're having to rewrite all sorts of things because there are lots of inputs that could have come into the proposal that just weren't there. And so that early stage, when you've got the blank sheet of paper, is the best time to get lots of people in on the conversation with you so you can brainstorm the ideas and start building a proposal up. So the way an affinity diagram process works is that first of all, you get your collaborators into a room. And as we've just seen with Jamboards, it doesn't have to be an actual room. It can be a virtual room where everyone's joining in on a Zoom and you can shift people into the Jamboard space and get ideas up. Then you use your post-it notes to brainstorm ideas. And I like to think about 3 areas of brainstorming. One is the key problem you're confronting. The second is the opportunity you're offering, and the third are the approaches to take forward, the methods or the work, the activities you'll actually do. This is where it gets interesting because all too often with the brainstorming exercise, you get people who are fond of ideas and really confident and will throw their hands up and throw lots of ideas in, and some of them, let's be honest, can be a little bit dominating in the conversation. And sometimes those with great ideas feel like their idea might not be worthy enough or they're just shy. And they stay quiet and you can lose some of the best ideas in the room. So the idea with this exercise is to put the ideas up in silence. No one's allowed to talk. You just get as many ideas as you can and you put them up on the wall. And while you're still in silence, you then start grouping them. Everyone starts grouping them. Everyone sees the ideas that are up there and starts moving them around so the like areas are together. And before you know it, you've actually got a whole bunch of great ideas and you've got them grouped into key areas of action. And suddenly a structure can start to take effect before your eyes. So just to give an example of using this in a Jamboard setting, this is something that Anne and I were doing when we started thinking about developing a webinar series around grant writing. And this we put together in about 15 minutes, and we started color coding some of the post-it notes. We moved them around. Anne popped in a picture of her daughter to remind ourselves that about the people out there. And yeah, after 15 minutes, we had the beginnings of what we thought would be a helpful and exciting series of webinars. So that's how we use Jamboards to create an affinity diagram. As I say, you can do this in an actual room, a real room, which we're allowed to do these days, or should we end up in lockdown or should you be in different parts of the country, you can always do these online as Jamboards as well. Now there does come a point where you actually have to start writing. And there are 2 good ways of doing this. One is with shared documents and one is with documents that you hold yourself. Now, the shared documents can be done with things like Google Docs or SharePoint, where anyone can access a document at any time, and people can make edits while other people are making edits as well, or putting content in. And it's really helpful for the first draft for those that really want to make a contribution to a proposal or a grant bid, to be able to give everyone the opportunity to put ideas in. And it gives everyone permission to be messy. It's not too it's not at the stage where you need to worry about the look and feel. It's about getting the content in. One of the sayings I often live by is, don't get it right, get it written, then get it right. So this is the getting it written stage. Then at some point though, you need to have someone who has, as they say, holding the pen. The person who has the main editorial control and is responsible for shaping it and bringing it all together. But you also want people to be able to get into it and be able to look at it. And that's where using things like Dropbox or OneDrive allow that, that shared access, but you might restrict the way that people can look at it, so that they provide feedback at different times, which the main editor or holds on to. I find it's also helpful to keep a master copy filed away somewhere else, so that if something goes horribly wrong and content is lost, you've got the backup there. Need to think about things like when you're using a Dropbox or a OneDrive version, need to think about dating the document so that people know that this is the most recent one. And it might need to ask people to provide input at different times, so that you don't double up and create version duplicates, which can be, let's be honest, a real pain. This is all just to say that when you have lots of people making input into a document, there are ways that you can maximize their value, but also constrain them in a way that you can ensure that you're not losing great content as well. Right, we have another poll now, and our lovely Aggie is going to pop it up on screen. Thanks, Aggie. Excellent. Okay, so this is about writing, and this should be a multiple choice one, and you can pick the which ones are the typos. There we go. Numbers are coming in. Which are typos? Well, one thing that's pleasing, we started this session with 47 people and we're now up to 60. So thank you for staying and thank you for continuing to come in. I'm really pleased. We've got 40 of 60 have voted now. 41. We'll just keep it running for another half a minute. Okay, terrific. Thanks, Aggie. Could we end the poll and pop it up on screen now? Thank you. And sharing the results. So thank you to everyone that participated. If you clicked on any of them as being a typo, you were correct. If you clicked on all of the above, you were also correct. So, and some of these things are really easy to miss. Accommodation has two N's. Our organisation's proposal should have an apostrophe before the S. We would have written this earlier, should be we would have written this earlier. It's a big challenge. Again, should have had apostrophe before the S. So they're all just really common, really easy typos to make. And I just want to use this as an example why it's always helpful to have a fresh pair of eyes, look at a proposal or a bid before it goes in. Thanks, Aggie. I'll close that now. So I'm now just going to talk about ways that you can make your submissions just that bit clearer. And maybe I should have said that when I titled this slide. How to make your submission clearer is a better way of saying than ways to increase the clarity of your submissions. Note to self, I'll change that for the next slide. Now I'm just going to check the Q&A. I think there might be a question here. Oh, someone's saying great tool. Thank you for that. Okay, when you're doing a grant bid or writing a proposal, ask yourself if you can put things in a nutshell. If you can say in 100 words or fewer what you're asking for, the problem you will address, who or what will benefit, how they will benefit, and over what time frame. If you can do this, write that down and try and open with it if you possibly can, because that puts right at the front of your proposal the key things that you're offering and the benefits you'll be delivering. Now, this is really hard. Getting something down to 100 words or fewer is a huge challenge. The man who invented the first dictionary, Samuel Johnson, once wrote, "I'm sorry I didn't have time to write a shorter letter." And it really is hard sometimes to get all the work that you do condensed down into something as tight as this. But if you can, it just adds that much extra value to the grant, and it makes it that much clearer for the person who's reviewing it. Now, I won't go through this in detail. We have a workbook that will be sent out to everyone who participated, and this slide is in there. It's just some guidance on how to make things just that clearer throughout proposal, so that the funder is able to read it and see straight away what it is that you're asking for and what you'll be delivering, and not get distracted by all the by the occasional error, because there are some people, and I admit I am one of them, who does get distracted by typos. Others don't see them and move on. But it's important to make sure that your writing is really clear and as typo-free as possible. What I would say, though, about clarity of your submission is things like using clear and accessible language. So you'll see that in the workbooks when these are sent out afterwards, and there's some examples there. Having very clear headings or subheadings in a document so that there's a really nice straightforward flow through the document. And in Word, they've actually got built-in heading levels, which are really helpful to making that structure clear. That can be harder when you're doing an online submission. Some of the portals don't allow that level of detail, but if you can, even by using a bold font, that can be quite helpful in making things clearer. Try to be tight and direct with what you're writing. It's really easy sometimes to clutter a document with lots of very stream of consciousness rambles where you're just getting stuff down and not going back to make it really tight and clear. And I'll give an example of that shortly. As I mentioned with the typo exercise, having fresh eyes to proofread and pick up any of the minor errors that can creep in will help your cause. Being careful of unintended meaning, and if you look at the picture to the right there, the person who put that great big sticker on the back of the bus didn't really think about quitting school. They were thinking about quitting smoking. But those sorts of unintended consequences can creep in that people may not notice. And lastly, I'm just going to say that punctuation is there to contain one thought and only one thought. I will say this one more time. Punctuation is there to contain a thought and only one thought. Punctuation is your friend, and it's your greatest tool in making your writing and your submissions that much clearer. And I'm going to give an example here of a wording for a proposal that is really well intended, but it's hard to follow. There's no punctuation. It's one great big long sentence that has no use of commas or full stops and so on. And like I say, it's really well intended, and you can, if you look at it hard, you can work out the intention there of helping to develop a program for school leavers with skills and resources. I'll let you read through that. So that's well intended. Just by adding the odd comma and splitting it into a couple of sentences with semicolons suddenly makes that exact same wording a lot clearer. And this is pretty good if you like reading entire paragraphs, and some people do. So in this one, if you read through it, it's just that bit tighter. It's a nice, clearer way of what it is you're looking to do. And it creates these nice pauses with the commas and the full stops and the semicolons that help the reader to take it in more. And then the third one is just the same again, exactly the same text with some bullet points added in. And suddenly it's even clearer. As you can see, it's spread out across the page more. Your eye easily flows through the differences, and it's just much clearer. And this is something that I would say is oriented to the needs of the funder. The funder is able to pick it up very quickly about what's needed there. I know I'm probably labouring this a bit, but I can't stress too much the importance of keeping things tight as you write. I just want to check if there's some Q&A here. A question about requesting funding if there is a surplus. Is there an amount that's kept in surplus? Not sure I can answer that one, to be honest. Might hold that one to the end. Just checking on the chat if there's anything.
Adrian, I was just working on that a little bit. So as far as requesting funding if there's a surplus, so it's an organizational decision, and I've had different boards who feel differently about this, but generally 3 to 6 months of operational cost in your reserve is kind of basic. As far as surpluses, and if you're running a really hard surplus, like a really high surplus, you might not be able to establish the need case as well, but you might be able to also. It kind of depends on how big that is, right? So that's kind of a basic answer to that.
Thanks, Anne. That's great. Chat's coming through. People saying love bullet points, and punctuation doesn't just help people breathe; it helps them think as well. So thank you for your feedback there. Meg saying that bullet points are a favourite, so much easier to read, and they are. Not everyone wants to read an academic paragraph. Okay, I'll keep pressing on. So again, as I mentioned before, having fresh eyes to proofread's really important. Those of you who are in Auckland may have driven past this orchard out near Kumiu, and I'm sure they do lovely bromeliads, orchids, yuccas and succulents, but there's no apostrophe before the S, and people like me just kind of shudder when we go by, and I'm really this person here, the apostrophe man who says, I'll have that chalk, thank you. And if you have people on your team who are the apostrophe man, as the proposal is getting towards the submission stage, that's where you bring them in, because they pick up the points of detail like this and help shape up the document so that it's really clear and easy to read for the funder. Also, if you can do a table of contents in your bid, it just helps keep the structure really clear. It gives you a good sense too before you submit the bid that that you've got everything laid out in the right places and that everything's set out the way it ought to be. If you use the heading structures in Word, you can actually generate a table of contents automatically, which not a lot of people know. You don't have to laboriously go through and generate a table. You can do it yourself in a matter of seconds, just using the table of contents function. Now, for those that are having to submit via portals, you can't do this. But if you're doing the initial development in Word, it can be quite helpful just for getting the structure clear. And then also, it's all very well to talk about the impact you think you're going to have and to pull out lots of figures and so on about the people you'll take through the program and the impacts you expect to have. But if you can pull out some real life quotes about how your program or organization is making a difference in the lives of people and the lives of communities and in ecosystems, then that's where the proposals really start to sing. They bring, as we say here, personalization and heart to the story and create a picture of people's experience and create an emotional response. So this is a fictitious one on the right here that I think, Anne, you wrote, didn't you?
I did.
But it's the sort of thing that we hear from people that we work with when programs are working at their best. And you know, this may be a fictional quote, and there may not be this Dr. Smith who wrote it, but we have heard things like this time and again from people's programs, and bringing those sorts of that sort of feedback to life is what really grabs the attention of funders. Do you want to add to that, Anne?
Oh, I mean, it's just such a useful way, and you can convey so many other things depending on the choices you make about the vignettes you choose to use, right? So great way to bring in some additional heart as well as content. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's right. And there's lots of sources that you can get them from. You might have had an evaluation done of your program before where there may be this sort of material in hand as evidence of the impact. You may have had letters of support, or you might want to ask someone who's worked with the program to provide a letter of support. The people who work on the program often have good news stories to tell, and even pulling that out in their own words can be a great example. And Anne earlier had her proposal bank, some of the things that you keep in the hard drive of your computer that you can draw on easily when you're doing a proposal. Things like this are the sorts of things that are great to bank as well, so that you're not scrambling around at the last minute to include these quotes or these letters of support. You've got them elsewhere. Someone's just made a comment saying that we inserted photos into applications to show physical situations which are hard to describe in words, and that's a great idea. Yeah, thanks for adding that. Again, the sorts of things that bring things to life, and it's not always words, it's sometimes pictures, it's sometimes graphs. If you have the ability in a proposal to do that, then yeah, do that. I'm just going to check on the chat as well if there's I think any point coming out. Are we to put this in the supporting document? The online submissions often don't have a large word count to add these in. How many pages are too many for supporting documents? That's a really good question, Emma. Thanks for asking that. It's how long is a piece of string? Often they'll give guidance in the proposal about how long supporting documents can be. And sometimes you can actually just call and ask as well. If you can put them in the online submission, that's great, but I agree, sometimes the portals don't allow that sort of thing. So it's always good to check with the funder what's possible to be able to include in the document. Thanks, that was a great question. Okay, I'm going to hand back to Anne now. We're going to talk about some of the ways of delivering a well-presented final submission. Yeah, over to you, Anne.
Great. This part, once you get into it, well, at least for me, can get quite obsessive, like especially if this is a submission that's not in a portal, right? Even in a portal submission, you might not be looking at fonts and all of that, but you're wanting to make sure that your content is well reviewed, solid, that you've gone through it a couple of times. I know, one of the things you can do, you're developing it perhaps in a Word document and then transferring it over into the portal. If you are delivering something that's a written, it's in Word or, you have to deliver it in that format, make sure that it looks good to the reader's eye, that it's easy to read. I've put some tips in here for you. We don't want to do really small fonts. A lot of times people have read hundreds of pages. Your eyes get quite tired. Use of white space is really good. A really basic font, because if you're sending it through, something that's easy to read. The body text in black, it's hard to see it if it's, like in a slight, I've seen sometimes it comes across in like a gray. So, making sure that the readability is really good. Giving some space to those lines. Reading, if it is a written submission, if it's lengthy and it's all crunched together, we all know that that's harder to read. And if it is a RFP, where it's a government procurement, usually is the big RFPs, don't significantly modify the templates, because they actually break them up sometimes on the other end, and different people are rating different sections. There's all kinds of reasons why they've put it in that template form. So, and make sure you number your pages if it's going through, and you have your organization's name so that you have that continuity. It also links, so it's thinking about content. If your organization's name or logo even is able to be at the bottom of each page, then it's associating your organization with that content over and over. So just a couple little things. You might have other things that that are useful. So once again, this is not necessarily for a portal submission, but you can use your brand style guide, right? There's different ways to bring that through. Use the colors. You're going to have a primary color palette, even if you don't technically have a whole, you know, flash logo that's been developed by some designer. You have some colors that you generally use for your organization, and it's easy to bring those over. And then it gives a little bit of a highlight, as well as consistency through the document. So, right, if you have all the colors of the rainbow, well, it might stand out a bit. It's not consistent, and it can be distracting for the reader. I have literally gone in with that little dropper tool with some of the people that organizations I work with, and just dropped a color off of their website so that I can pull it through the whole document for consistency.
And you're going to have to show me how to do that. I haven't done that yet. I do it all manually. So thank you. Let's get together later and you can show me that over a Zoom. Thank you. Okay. This next slide is about ways of getting on top of the detail. Some people are words person and love reading through text. Some people are pictures and diagrams people, and they need pictures, diagrams, or tables that can help, again, nutshell the key issues that you're trying to bring to bear. So the examples I've given here is a simple table that sets out the different work streams that you might have in a program, and the key deliverables that you're going to achieve through the course of the program. And you may have described all of that in lots of text beforehand, but if you have the ability, again, I know that an online submission might struggle to do that, but if you have the ability to put things into a simple table format that just nutshells the approaches, that helps the funder so much. And likewise, simple diagrams that I did the one on the right in PowerPoint. It was just using a couple of circles and adding some text just to show who the stakeholders are in a particular proposal or organization, who the people who will be working on this internally, who the external stakeholders are, and who in the middle are the people that will benefit. Now, there's lots of ways you can do diagrams to bring things together, but that's just one example. Those sorts of things really pop out at the reader and help them see that you're on top of what it is you're trying to do and that you can communicate it clearly. Now, a lot of people will also put data into a presentation, but how you make that data shown is really important, and it can be quite a challenge. It's really easy to do a pie chart, but if you use the one on the left, the funder will look at it and go, what's this about? What do those colors mean? And they have to look between the numbers, which are really dark and hidden inside the graph, and look down at the legend at the bottom and say, so which one's New Zealand European? Oh, it's the dark blue one. And which one's Māori? Where's that category? That's the orange one. So Excel and other programs will give you some default settings, but you can actually play with them, and you can present data in a much clearer way. And this is exactly the same data that instead is presented in a bar chart, in a way that's arranged from the largest number to the smallest number, with other at the bottom, in a way that's just much clearer to follow than having to continually look between a number and a legend or so on. This is again, this is completely made up data, but it's just an example of how you should think about what you need to communicate rather than what's the opportunity, or what's the option that that your software might be presenting in terms of presenting it. If you can use the one on the right to really make the data clearer, then that will be really helpful to your cause. Secondly, again, this one is presenting exactly the same data in two different ways. The one on the left is a three-dimensional chart showing age bands in a particular program. Again, this is made up. And showing how the age bands maybe had changing over time and how different population groups are becoming part of it. Now, there's a lot here, and there's probably more than I would usually present in a chart, but sometimes you are working with lots of different age ranges. The one on the left, I would never use. 3D charts are really hard to follow. Columns hide behind other columns, so you don't really know how the 25 to 34-year-olds or the 35 to 44-year-olds are doing in the chart on the left, because they're hidden by the other age groups. The one on the right, again, as I say, there's a lot of data there, but at least you can see the trends over time with the lines, and I've color-coded the lines as well, so that you can see how they change over time in a much easier, more accessible way. I've moved the year groups to the end and arranged them so that you can see quite quickly that the top line is for the 65 years and over group, and the bottom line started off with the 25 to 34 group, but as that changed, they moved into the middle. So all those sorts of things are cues that you can give the reader so that they can understand the flow of the data much more. If you're doing trends over time, it's much better to use a line graph than a column graph as this one is. And I would always try to avoid a 3D graph. Just because Excel says you can do it doesn't mean to say you should.
Right.
Right, we're running ahead of time, so we'll have lots of time for Q&A. We're into the wrapping up and watching this space. And Anne, I think we've got another Jamboard, haven't we?
We do.
Do you want to run through the learning objectives? And when we've done that, I'll pop the Jamboard up again.
So today, just to recap, in the beginning, we talked about understanding common pitfalls, how to avoid them, building your proposal or grant library, tools and resources for collaborative writing, and ways to increase the clarity of your submissions, as well as tips on delivering a well-presented final submission. So now we're going to use another function. So if you click on participants.
Okay, I'll stop sharing and I'll pop up my Jamboard again.
Okay. If you click on participants, then you'll be able to use your raise hand function. So if you want to raise your hand if you feel like we've met the learning objectives today. Ooh. Ooh. Oh, that's really exciting.
Oh, that's good. Thank you. Sorry, and I was jumping the gun on the Jamboard, so I won't pop it up just yet.
Okay.
So we've got, yeah,
oh,
16.
Wait, 16.
Oh, I think that the hand goes down after a few seconds, so it leapt up to a large number of people, and now it's drifting down again. So thank you.
It's going down.
we felt good for a moment. I'll now share the last Jamboard. So if you here we go. Oh, some people have leapt in already. So on page 3, if you click on the top of the screen again and you move along one more page, you go to say name one take-home that you'll use from today in your practice. Different chart styles, collaboration when writing grant proposals, Jamboard, affinity diagram, fonts and spacing. Excellent. Any more coming through here?
Let's see.
Oh, there we go. Structuring my response better. Oh, that one disappeared. 100-word overview, Jamboards, proposal bank, nutshell, collaboration and quiet time for everyone to input ideas. Proofreading. I may have overlabored that point, but I'm glad it's being picked up. Logic models. Thank you. Using vignettes and quotes. Reckon this will give more impact to our requests. That's great to hear. Using pics and graphics more. Creating a library. Jamboard. Structuring my response better so we have clarity of
Great.
what we want to do and align with funders' objectives.
We have somebody on the comments and said that they'll definitely use vignettes and graphs.
Great.
Oh, keeping it tight. Great. Wonderful. Oh, I'm really, really pleased to see all that. Great.
Yeah,
I'm glad that was useful to you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, I'll stop sharing now. And
now the next thing you're going to get is in your chat, you're going to get a link for an evaluation. So it's a little bit, as we wrap up, we want to flick that through so you have a chance to do it while everybody's still here. It should only take, what is it, 2 minutes, Adrian, to complete?
It shouldn't take more than 2 minutes. I designed it to be hopefully only 1 minute. So there we go. Amy's just popped that up on the chat. You can see there's a click the following link here to complete the survey. So I'll just leave that there for a few seconds, and then I'll put the slides back up to just run through a few final take-homes as people are completing the survey, and also we'll have time for Q&A as well. So I'll just share the screen. There we go. So we've done the learning objectives, and people have popped in things they've learned from today, and I'm so gratified to see all that. Thank you. Just to really bring all this into the nutshell, as we mentioned earlier, if there's some take-home messages that we'd like to have from this, first of all is think about the audience. Who is reading your proposal and what it is they are seeking? It's not just about what you're able to deliver, it's what they're seeking and what they'll fund. So making sure those two line up. Structuring your proposal, having it really carefully structured so that there's a nice logical flow with clear conclusions so that the funder can read through this and know exactly what it is he or she has been asked to provide funds for. Organising your proposal clearly so that you can communicate your offering in a way that sings to the reader. And synthesising the detail, whether it's through tables or graphics or pictures or vignettes, so that funders can easily make sense of what it is that you're seeking. And lastly, presenting data in a way that's simple and straightforward, and that helps sell your message and helps convey the impact that you're having. And I think you're going to talk about the resource booklet.
So after this session, and I know, you know, maybe trying to keep up with notes is difficult during these. So you are going to get some resources. The session is recorded. And you're going to get a workbook that has some handy tools, some extra guides, and things to support your grant writing and your proposal development. So we hope you enjoy those and that they're useful to you.
Cool, thank you. So we've already given you the link in the chat. I really do again want to acknowledge the Centre for Social Impact and Foundation North, who between them have made this session today possible. I hope this has been useful to you. We've already given you the evaluation link, so I won't plug that again. But what I might do is shut down the presentation and open up to any questions that might be coming through on the Q&A.
I think we have it. We've answered quite a few so far. So if anybody wants to go to the Q&A and see the answered questions. There was one in here when we were talking about reserves and sustainability. I say it's not so much, you know, the intention was not that you're going to be necessarily drawing on those reserves, but that it's kind of a temperature check for where your organization is financially and how you make that use case, or the need case for the organization to be able to receive funds. So, you know, without delving into organizational finances right now, but sticking straight to grant writing, you know, you can usually position that either way, and or even with surplus. You know, most NGOs are, I don't know, how do I put it? We're not rolling in it, right? So establishing a need case for the organization usually is pretty straightforward. So don't be shy if you have a little bit in reserves or a bit in surplus.
Well, there's one question here about the use of jargon as a common pitfall. I feel like this is a problem from both sides. Funders use jargon that might be interpreted correctly, and what they think they mean is different to what they actually mean, such as things like intergenerational disadvantaged or increased equity. I agree, and I think it's a problem that we all face in trying to communicate things. We do get sucked into the sorts of things that we say all the time that are meaningful in our own circles, but when fresh eyes from outside go in and see it, it's not always clear what it means, and it's something that I think is important for all of us to consider, whether we're funders or fund seekers. Did you want to add to that?
There can be moments where like a quick little jargony phrase might catch somebody's eye, co-design, right? But like Adrian's saying, people can interpret that differently. So if you do use them as like a way, it's like a mnemonic device, right? To have people latch onto something, but then explain the meaning of it afterwards.
Cool. There was a question in the chat about other presentations, and just to note that we have the last of the 5 coming this Friday covering marketing and comms. So if you want to email info@csinz.org to see if there's any places available for that, please do.
Somebody asked,
yeah, go ahead,
should we over ask knowing we'll get a portion of what we asked for, or should we just ask for the exact amount of what we want? Oh, I'm really hesitant to answer that on live.
I think it's often very clear to many funders when over asking is happening, is a caution I would add in response to that.
But I would also say, you know, don't shortchange the program. Ask for what you need. And I think this is the thing I run across a lot, and I'm absolutely okay to say this on a live webinar. Ask for what you need and don't shortchange yourself, because it shortchanges your initiative. And a lot of the, when I was a funder or the funders I speak with, you know, they want people to ask for what they need. You might need to, and you might need to say, look, you know, we put an extra 10% on because we know that, you know, costs might flow here a little bit, or to allow some variability. Also working within our COVID environment, while here in New Zealand, we're all kind of wandering around, we're still living in this kind of volatile and uncertain environment, right? So if you identify something in that project, initiative, whatever you're asking for, that could have impacts, make sure that your that cost is getting accounted for, and then explain what that is in your narrative. So I think a well-explained program and financial implications of it is always appreciated.
There's a question here saying, can you talk to the financial presentation of your budget and what's the best way? It's hard to say what a best way is. I think funders aren't very rarely looking for the deep dive line by line detail of every item, and so there's room, I think, to take things up a level and have sort of broad categories of funding within a budget. I think funders will often sort of direct how they want the budget to be presented. They might just want to know about the number of personnel and the personnel costs and the resources that are going with it. And to sometimes I'll say keep it quite straightforward like that. So just be mindful of the signals that the funders are sending about the budget. And it will probably vary from grant to grant. Did you want to add to that, Anne?
No, I think that's pretty concise. Yeah, they're
Cool.
usually not a full presentation of like a P&L or a full budget. Yeah, depends. Yeah. It just depends.
Yeah. A follow up to the question about earlier question about what we ask for, and the person said, including the other things we need, real needs, but things we could live without if we don't get the full amount. I'd just like to reiterate Anne's comment about, you know, don't sell yourself short, ask for what you need. And if the opportunity is there for it to fund it, then there's no harm in asking for it. Yeah. Apologies if we misinterpreted the question in the first instance as well. I think, are there any questions coming through on the chat as well? Just checking. Chloe's just said that you can find details on all the sessions and recordings of the sessions from the Centre for Social Impact website, and she's popped the link there. Some people are having to leave now, so thank you to those who are giving their thanks and heading away. It's been lovely having you along.
It's been absolutely fantastic. Thank you for everybody participating. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and a fantastic holiday. And yeah, thanks to CSI and all of the supporters of this program.
Yeah. If there aren't any further questions, I'll close this with a final karakia. Karakia is kia tau, kia tātou katoa, te atawhai o te rongarawa, te araha o te tahi ki te tahi, mena manakitanga o te wā, humie huie taiki e. And that is to say, let us all be settled, the generosity of the higher purpose and power, the love of one to another, the hospitality of the present. Join it, gather it, it is done. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.